welcome to the deep dive. So you've sent us some really interesting sources about minimalism and consumerism.
Yeah, they seem like big topics, maybe even a bit confusing side by side.
Exactly. And it can feel like there's just so much information out there. But today we're going to explore these two, well, quite different ideas in a way that's hopefully pretty easy to follow.
Think of it as us doing the groundwork for you.
Right. Giving you the main points quickly and clearly.
That's the plan, because minimalism and consumerism, they're really at their core just different ways of thinking about, well, stuff, about what we own.
One is generally about having less. The other often encourages having more. Simple as that on the surface.
But there's more nuance, of course. So today, we just want to help you grasp the key ideas behind each one based on what you share with us.
And we know many of you want to learn efficiently. You want the important info without, wading through tons of detail.
That's definitely what we aim for here.
So we've looked through your sources, and we're going to pull out the most crucial bits for you. Ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's unpack this. First off, what do these terms actually mean according to the materials? Let's start with minimalism.
Okay, so from what we've seen, minimalism is presented as a way of living where people make a conscious choice to own fewer possessions.
Fewer things, got it.
But it's not just about less. It's also about quality over quantity. Choosing things that last, things that are, well, good.
And it involves decluttering, getting rid of things.
Yes, getting rid of things that aren't genuinely needed or loved. That applies to physical stuff, obviously, but also maybe the mental clutter or stress that can come from managing too many things.
Interesting. So it's mental space, too.
Definitely. The core ideas seem to be intentionality, choosing carefully, and mindfulness, paying attention to what truly matters. Often that means prioritizing experiences or personal growth over just accumulating objects.
Okay, makes sense. So then, consumerism. How's that defined in contrast?
Well, consumerism is described more as let's say, a social and economic system, one that actively promotes the increasing acquisition of goods and services, buying more and more.
And there's often this underlying belief, isn't there, that buying things leads to happiness.
Exactly. Or that it shows your status, your success. It's this pursuit of material wealth. And the idea is that our happiness is somehow tied to how much we consume, how many things we have.
Right. So one is about less, but meaningful. The other often pushes for more and more.
That's a good way to put it. Now, let's dig into ownership and possessions a bit more, because this really highlights the difference.
Yeah, how do they approach the things we actually own?
Well, for someone aiming for minimalism, the sources suggest possessions are chosen very carefully. They look for items that are genuinely useful, practical, or bring real joy.
Not just stuff for the sake of stuff.
Precisely. The goal isn't quantity, it's having the right things for you. And the claimed benefit is often a feeling of freedom, less stress, because there's simply less to manage, less to worry about.
Okay. And the consumerist approach?
That often puts the emphasis on accumulation. Getting the latest trends, maybe luxury goods, things that act as status symbols.
Keeping up with the Joneses, as they say.
Kinda, yeah. There can be a thrill in acquiring something new, a sort of fleeting happiness. But the sources also point out the downsides.
Like what?
Like potential for clutter, obviously, but also debt from overspending and maybe even a cycle of dissatisfaction because that new thing feeling doesn't last, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Let's use an example maybe, like clothes. A minimalist might focus on having a smaller wardrobe, but with high-quality pieces they love that mix and match and will last.
Versatile stuff.
Yeah. Whereas someone more influenced by consumerism might have, closets full of clothes, often buying new things frequently just because they're in fashion or on sale, even if they don't really need them.
That really clarifies the difference in mindset.
Yeah.
So thinking about this, what stands out to you about these different ways of thinking about what we own? It's quite a contrast.
It really is, and it naturally leads to thinking about the environment, doesn't it?
Yes. How do these approaches connect to sustainability?
Well, minimalism, as presented in the sources, often links quite strongly to sustainability. It's sort of logical. If you consume less, you generally create less waste.
Makes sense. Buy less, throw away less.
Exactly. And minimalists often try to choose items that are durable, well-made, things that will last a long time. Sometimes there's also a focus on choosing things that are, made in a good way for people and the planet.
Ethically sourced, eco-friendly, those kinds of terms.
Right. Using simpler words, just made well and thoughtfully.
Okay, so minimalism seems to align with being kinder to the environment. What about consumerism?
Well, the sources paint a different picture there. The constant drive for more consumption can have a pretty significant negative impact.
How so?
Think about it. More buying means more production. That uses up natural resources, water, energy, raw materials, and then all the extra stuff we buy eventually becomes waste, contributing to landfill problems and pollution.
Things like fast fashion come to mind.
Absolutely. Fast fashion is a prime example. Cheap clothes, made quickly, worn a few times, then tossed out. It really highlights that throwaway culture linked to high consumerism. Lots of disposable products, things not designed to last.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, as you said, what kind of world do these different approaches potentially lead to? It sounds quite stark.
Yeah, it raises the question, are we aiming for a world where we're more mindful of resources and waste, or one where we're constantly extracting, producing, and discarding?
That's a powerful thought.
Well,
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. What about our wallets? Financial well-being.
yes, money. The sources suggest a pretty clear link between minimalism and potentially better financial health.
Really? How does that work?
Well, if your focus shifts from buying lots of things to just buying what you truly need or deeply value, you naturally tend to spend less.
That seems obvious, I guess.
Right. And the money saved can then be used for other things, maybe experiences, travel, investing, paying off debt, or just building a safety net, feeling more financially secure.
And minimalists often focus on quality, right? So maybe spending more up front saves money later.
That's often the idea, buying something well-made that lasts for years instead of replacing a cheap version over and over. It's about value over just low cost.
Okay. So what about consumerism and finances? The flip side.
Well, as you might expect, the sources suggest consumerism can make managing money trickier. That constant pressure or desire to buy the newest thing, to keep up with trends, it can easily lead to impulse buying.
Spending money you hadn't planned to spend.
Exactly. And that can lead to debt, financial stress, and that cycle we mentioned, always wanting the next thing, which can make it hard to feel satisfied or financially stable.
This raises an important question then. How do these ideas relate to how we actually manage our money day to day?
Yeah, are we really in control of our spending, or are we being influenced, maybe more than we realize, by this wider culture of consumption?
Food for thought. Now, it might sound like we're painting these as totally separate, black and white, good versus bad.
Right. But actually, the sources we looked at suggest something perhaps more realistic and maybe more helpful for most people.
Which is?
Finding a balance. It's not necessarily about everyone ditching all their possessions and becoming extreme minimalists.
No, that wouldn't work for everyone. So what does this balance look like?
It seems to be about becoming more mindful consumers. Still perhaps enjoying buying things occasionally, but being more critical about why we're buying them.
Thinking about whether it adds real value to our lives.
Exactly, and balancing that desire for things with valuing experiences, relationships, personal growth, the non-material stuff.
So adopting some minimalist principles, maybe, rather than the whole lifestyle strictly.
Precisely. It could help break free from that constant pressure to consume, maybe find more contentment with what we already have, appreciate simplicity a bit more.
Here's where it gets really interesting, perhaps.
Yeah.
The sources seem to suggest that by finding this kind of a middle ground, this mindful consumption, we can actually get a lot of the benefits.
Like what?
Like appreciating meaningful possessions without being overwhelmed, cutting down on waste, improving our financial situation, and contributing to a more, sustainable way of living. It's not all or nothing.
That makes a lot of sense, a more balanced approach.
So, to kind of wrap things up, minimalism and consumerism offer these really different paths regarding our stuff, our money, even our impact on the planet.
Yeah, minimalism leaning towards less, intentionality, maybe inner focus. Consumerism often pushing for more, external validation, constant acquisition.
But the key takeaway from the sources seems to be that finding your own balance, maybe borrowing some wisdom from minimalism, could lead to a more fulfilling and sustainable life overall.
It definitely makes you pause and think about your own relationship with possessions, doesn't it?
It really does. After this deep dive, maybe just take a moment to reflect on the things you choose to own or choose not to own.
So what does this all mean for the things you decide, consciously or unconsciously to bring into your life tomorrow?
That's definitely something worth pondering.